Ego is all about keeping us safe. But the thing that the ego is trying to protect us from is actually from isolation, from invalidation, right? Oftentimes people will respond to symptoms, and when you're in a position of leadership, the root cause is usually you. But the key here is we have to start with awareness. Change happens from the inside out, and change is most instructive when it comes from leadership. So leaders need to also do the work from the inside out. I'm so excited for this conversation.
How's everybody feeling today?
Believe there's time for it, and there are going to be seasons in your life where
I know that I can do a damn good job.
I can be who I am, and as a leader.
So do not be afraid of collaboration.
As we're learning things, we're gonna make lots of mistakes.
It's for you to then continue to move around this space, to move around the world and navigate it.
You are right where you're meant to be. All right, y'all. I'm so excited for this episode. You have no idea. In this conversation, we talked with Marie Deveaux. Amazing person. So I'm gonna need you to cancel your next meeting so you can actually take a listen to the leadership intervention that we talked about. Specifically, we got into the ego-driven performer. You know her. She's booked, she's busy, and she's unbothered, and secretly one undone comment away from falling apart. She performs like her rent depends on it. And sometimes it absolutely does, right? We all know I've shown up code switching every day. But here's the part nobody wants to talk about. Y'all love to clap for the performer until she starts setting boundaries. We've experienced it, right? Until she stops doing the absolute most and chooses herself. Until she says, I am not available for that. That's when she goes from pet to threat, and all of the compliments dry up, and the you're so amazing turns into you've changed, right? But Marie didn't just come for us personally. She ain't drag us like that, right? She came for the systemic performance industry too. Because what happens when the organization is the one performing? Yeah, we've seen it happen. It's happening right now. We're not going to talk about it, but it's happening. What happens when the whole school district is cosplaying transformation? When they drop a land acknowledgement on Monday and quietly push out Black staff by Friday? When they post an equity statement in bold, big font, but whisper budget cuts when it's time to pay BIPOC facilitators. Yeah, we're talking about that. And we know folks say they've grown, but the numbers don't lie. I know a lot of folks have felt gaslit in the season of what's happening right now, right? Marie said to us, the ego isn't just about pride, it's about protection. And that is a mindset shift we all need to start thinking and being on. Because sometimes the ego, right, we're dragging so hard, is the thing that actually protects us against falling apart. So here's what I want you to listen for. The moment Marie redefines ego as a nervous system response. The breakdown of how organizations mimic the performer pattern. And the one question that will gut check your whole leadership identity. Yeah, that. This episode is structured to act as a mirror for you, your boss, and for your entire org chart. So if you've ever felt like you had to earn your right to rest, or if you're still trying to figure out why they stopped clapping when you stopped overfunctioning, this one right here, this one is for you for sure. So let's get into it. I'll see you on the other side. Talk to you soon. Okay, y'all see? This is my girl. Okay, so I want to introduce Marie, founder, CEO of High Tides Consulting. She's writing a book. She's, being released over the summer. She's an executive coach, equity strategist. She recently launched the Dreamers Canvas and the Bridges to Barriers, like all of these acolytes, right? But like, to me, she's Marie. She's my healer. She's my clarity compass in times of spiral and stress. To me, she's a mother, right? She's deeply human. And I am so honored today to be sharing this space with her. Marie has called me home to myself multiple times for multiple years. And I'm so excited to share this space with her. So please join me in welcoming Marie. So excited. Let me bring her on. All right. Hi, Marie.
Hi, I'm so excited for this conversation.
How are we feeling today?
I am doing well. I got some good sleep. Okay. I had a whole bagel for breakfast. I'm feeling energized because, not every day you show up like that. So I'm feeling really good today.
Okay, and I see we got a little pink lip going. We got a little pink.
Well, I had to put it together for the live, for the tickety talk.
I mean, we can't see the comments though. I was hoping that my tech would have been here to be dropping things in the comment section, but it's okay.
Okay.
My tech ain't teching, but we know we live. Okay. We know people are watching, or it might just be me and you. But either way,
that's okay. We're gonna have a good time regardless.
We'll have a good time regardless. So, and then people will be able to catch the playback anyway, right? Which most of it is coming out in July, but we're gonna do like snippets, now in June. So it's exciting. But let's just dive in. I want you to tell the people more about you from your lips, because I know I mean they heard from me, but let you tell them. All right.
I like the way you tell it though. I mean, you got me over here sounding real good.
What do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
Well, when you in it, you don't always see it. So I appreciate the acknowledgement.
When you're authentic with it, Marie, it's when you're authentic with it, you don't know it. Okay, that part.
I love it. But hello, everyone. My name is Marie Deveaux. I am living in this world in a woman's body, in a Black woman's body. I'm a founder. I'm a creative. I am a writer. I'm a coach. I am a mom. I'm also 100% Caribbean. That is a huge part of my identity. And I lived in New York for 20 years and am now for the first time living in the American South. So there's a whole lot wrapped up in all of that. I also grew up on the West Coast. So I am a dynamic human and I'm excited for this conversation.
That was such a good, I love that. That's kind of hard to follow. I've been on these different lives, Marie. I've introduced myself like 5 or 6 different ways, but I ain't give it like that. So I might just have to steal little pieces of that. I just might have to steal pieces of that. So
I mean, it comes out different every time, just where we at today. That's where I'm at today.
But that one was good. That was good. But just to kick things off, I'm going to just jump right in and ask the questions. So, because I prepared like a little interview questions. And like I said before, Marie brings so much to the space. I believe, Marie, you've been doing like coaching and executive training for something like 25 years or something like that.
Yeah. So so I used to do this work on the corporate side, working for other people. And so I started doing leadership development and training people in, the early 2000s. Wow. And did that for a number of different companies across New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. And then started this practice. My business started in 2016. Wow. But I've been coaching and developing leaders for my entire career.
So y'all heard it, right? She's been doing this before it got popular. That part. Okay. But in your coaching career, Marie, what do you notice about how this particular pattern that we're discussing today shows up, particularly in how they lead, right? I'll stop there, in how they lead other people.
Yeah. So when we're talking about ego, I just want to maybe start there because ego is not a bad thing, right? Ego, this is the sense of self you develop when you're around 2 to 4 years old that lets you know that you are separate from other people, that you are a distinct creative being, right? So that's not inherently bad. But because we all possess ego, there's also this need to protect that sense of self. And so when we seek to protect ourselves, we can do that to an extent that it no longer becomes helpful and instead turns into an actual barrier to connection. And so that's where we start seeing performance get really driven up, right? So when we're talking about ego driving performance or people who are performing leadership that's rooted in ego, it's often because the ego is rooted in a sense of fear. It's rooted in, fear of not being worthy, fear of being isolated, fear of being unsafe. And so when we lean so far into that ego as a motivator, we are then just operating from a place of fear, right? Which is only going to breed disconnection because that's how ego is designed. It's to keep us safe, right? So if we start there, then when we start thinking about, well, what does performance look like? It's all of those, in coaching, we call them defense mechanisms. In psychology, people call them attachment styles, right? So looking at the ways that we then interact in community spaces that would actually have us separate ourselves from others, which is, it's interesting when you think about it, because it's the very thing we're trying to avoid is what we end up doing from coming from that place of fear in an over-indexed way.
So I definitely wanted to share. So Marie didn't see my slide deck, guys. Okay. She didn't see it at all, but you see that it says here, fear of relevance, right? Like that's what Marie's talking about. Fear of protecting that ego, that sense of identity. So I'm really happy that you brought that up, Marie. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I have so many questions, based on that, but I'm just wondering if you can talk about when you said it drives up different parts, right? When it starts to get, when they, sorry, why am I fumbling? When they start to actually play that side up, right? To protect themselves. Yeah. I'm wondering, what does it cost them when they start doing that?
Oh, goodness. So this is interesting, right? Because ego is all about keeping us safe, right? And ego is created because we realize that, we are different from other people. We are separate. We are our own entity. But the thing that the ego is trying to protect us from is actually from isolation, from invalidation, right? And so what ends up happening when we are in spaces where perhaps there is an element of that being at stake, where there's potential for us to be invalidated, there's potential for us to be seen as unworthy, the response then, what the ego is going to do to protect us is then try to prove. Okay. And so that can look like any number of things, right? And I talk about, like, for myself, my go-to defense mechanism for a long, long time is the perfectionist, right? I'm also a really strong type A personality, which means my defense mechanism is to work hard, do all the things all the time, because I'm going to prove that I am worthy, that I belong, that you should accept me, right? And so we see that from a place of ego, right? From a place of I have to prove that I belong, that then turns into all of these potentially maladaptive behaviors, right? Perfectionism, we know, can lead to burnout, right? Hustling, this like overwork and grind culture has really negative outcomes for people. And so in this way, it's okay, the thing that's supposed to be protecting me, to help me be part of and feel part of a group, help me feel valuable, is actually having the opposite effect and having me now left not just exhausted, but also a lot of these maladaptive behaviors also end up pushing other people away, right? I talk about another one that I talk about is like the lone wolf. That's another one I really like. I'm gonna do everything by myself, right? I'm gonna prove everyone I got this to prove that I am worthy, right? But by doing that, that's actually power hoarding, right? Inability to delegate, inability to share work and to actually be in community around work. So now what you've done is you've actually isolated everybody. And so you're doing it because you want people to accept you, but instead what you're doing is you're actually pushing people away.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up, Marie, because I'm a part of this conversation with the Wounded to Wholeness Leadership Series is really talking about, and I know you've supported other leaders in this, is as they exit the corporate world, right? They bring those attributes with them unknowingly. Like they think, oh, I've left it, I've shook it, I've shaken it, right? And like, I mean, ma'am, no, you have not. I mean, I know, I know, Marie, in our work together, like you and I have had to have multiple iterations of conversation where it's like, oh no, I thought we were leaving that behind. How are you shifting in your own practice so that you don't continue to bring that culture with you? And I really, because I know, like, people think, I love this term of like you swallow the water of the culture, but you never, you know what I mean? Like you never really get it out unless you actually do the work and the acknowledgement that it's there. So I'm really happy that you are naming it in such a clear way, even because I know sometimes I'm not as clear. I'm thinking I'm clear, but Marie is naming it in a really clear way. So another question I have for you, Marie, is when was a moment in your own journey where you realized that you were potentially performing and not necessarily leading? And if it has happened to you, right, it might not have happened. Because I also realized that in this journey and developing the assessment that I developed is like you can cycle through these, right? So like maybe this has happened and maybe it has not for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, all of us do this. No one escapes the ego. This shows up everywhere. But especially if you've worked, as I have worked, if you've worked in corporate America, you are doing this a lot of the time. Because corporate American culture is grounded in hustler culture. It is grounded in perfectionism. It is grounded in urgency and all of these things that are textbook white supremacy culture traits, which when you look at, Tema Okun's work, right, around white supremacy culture, and you really break down those characteristics, many of those things manifest as those are defense mechanisms, right? They're all defensive postures in order to protect the ego. So if you've worked in corporate American culture, you are likely performing from a place driven by ego, where you are told your performance and what you do for others is actually what equates to your worth. Right. And so it creates this flywheel of I have to prove, I have to be perfect. Let there not be a typo in the email. Right. Let me make sure the slide deck is perfect. Let me make sure, or someone emailed me, let me respond right away. Otherwise, I won't be seen as valuable, worthy. I won't be good enough. The whole idea around corporate professionalism, that is a performance. That is 100% a performance. Right? Because who's to say there's only one way to show up that is valuable? That is, so I can speak. Yeah, I've showed up performing leadership from a place of ego. I used to wear suits to go into work. I worked in downtown New York City in the financial district. I put on a suit and went to work and had all the fancy dresses and was doing all of that. Because this is what professional looks like, right? That's what it looks like. I did the thing where I was getting up at 6 a.m. to go into the office so I could be there by 7 and then work a full day's work. So I could leave at 2 to go and take care of my kids and then get back online. Okay. After I put my kids to bed and was checking emails till 2 o'clock in the morning so I could get up again at 6. Right. And then end up on a performance review for it. I've been there.
There's this saying like, fake it till you make it. Okay. I hear people say that all the time. And I literally had this conversation with Tani the other day about like, we know what's happening with DEI, right? And we know like people are, losing their jobs. It's so unfortunate. but like the reckoning of like what happened with George Floyd, it pushed a lot of people into these jobs.
Oh,
Listen,
you want to talk about performance?
Listen.
So I have another good friend and colleague of mine, Renika Weston, talks about this idea of like what we're seeing now, this backlash that we're seeing now on the tail end of the racial reckoning. And I have to use air quotes because to reckon with something is to deal with it, and we ain't deal with nothing. So there was an awareness.
Accurate.
Right. People did not reckon, but there was an awareness. But it's interesting because one of the things Renika says is, okay, so 2020, everybody was so eager to go ahead and check a box. And now it's 2025 and those same people are busying themselves trying to erase the box they done checked. Boo, nobody was checking for you. You think you did something? You think you did something? Okay, that's real cute. But there's so much performance, especially in the DEI space, where a lot of companies were out here performing from a place of ego. People saying, what can I do? What can I put on my website so people think that I'm something that I am not?
And it's also who can I hire, right? And like, and it's like, for me, and this brings us into the next part of the conversation, which is the harm that ego-driven performers do. And it's just incredibly, in my mind, frustrating. I have to pull the slide because it's important to have it for people to see it. But like, it just feels, for me, right? It's now they're feeling guilt trippy. Okay. These companies. Okay. They're now they're looking for the very people that they're firing to be so empathetic to the, go ahead, Marie. Go ahead. Say the thing.
So this is just, the language piece is just so interesting to me because words are tools. Okay. And language has the power to reveal, to uncover, to unearth. And when weaponized, language also has the power to cover, to hide, and disclose. And what we are currently seeing is people using the language of equity, the language of community, to actually weaponize that same language to hide, to disclose, right? To shroud. And so when we talk about the ego-driven performer and we talk about the ways that people perform, right? Which, again, if we look at DEI as an explicit example, people use language in order to perform equity. Not to be equitable, but to perform equity, right? People use language, right? Marketing campaigns to make you think culture had changed when actually nothing had happened. Words on your website do not change culture. Hiring a Black woman to run your DEI department, to be your CDO, doesn't change culture, especially if you are not doing the work of giving that woman team and budget.
Right? Per is what the young people say. Clock that, okay? Okay.
Right. So there was a whole lot of performance, and all of that was driven by, oh goodness, don't let them cancel me.
Yes.
Right. Companies, right, showing up fully in their ego. Please, don't say we don't belong. Please, don't lock us out. Please, don't exile us in any way. I want to belong. What do I have to say to you to make you think?
And now they feel like we're indebted to them. We're indebted to them, right? Because I'm like, how am I now indebted to you? And 5 years later, you're now trying to fire me for the thing you said you stood on.
Right. And you didn't do any work. You didn't do any work. The number of people, I spent a lot of time talking to, because, we do a lot of, High Tides does a good amount of enterprise work. And, I'm talking to these young folks still working in, I say young folks, because we're all young at work, okay? But people across, generations are doing this work of like, I want to empower our ERG community, our, employee resource groups. I want to do this work. We want to be about equity, but I'm asking people, okay, so you had a cultural celebration. What's the measurable outcome of that? How is okay? You want And this is the thing, people were hiring DEI consultants talking about, can you send us a calendar of cultural events? What? How is that changing systems? We're talking about systems level change, and people thought they could throw a party, give people Juneteenth off, and that was going to change a system.
Listen.
They thought giving people, and I love when people tell, oh, you know, it's Juneteenth, I have the day. Well, good for you. Why do you think you need to tell me that? What is that about? That's
what does it do for me?
Yeah, need, right. That's not doing anything for me. I'm still a Black woman living in this Trump's America. Juneteenth ain't doing nothing for me. But you're sharing that with me because what? Because I'm supposed to give you a high five? You want cookies? Okay. Ego, okay?
You know, because I'm going to give you this chocolate chip and still say, what you going to do?
Right. It's like, okay, that's great. What's changed? What is different in the system?
And, you know, this great segue, Marie, into like, what do you think if these type of patterns continue to go unchecked? I know, like, for me, I'm using it in two ways, right? Like, we're using the global systemic way, but like then I'd also like to hear your perspective, like culturally within a leadership role in an organization. What happens when things like this go unchecked, particularly in the impact of it on the culture of the community and potentially the culture of the system globally?
Yeah. Well, I think when I think about leadership teams, I mean, the most clear repercussions of this is people will leave. When leaders show up in performance, it's discernible. People recognize that when you are not about the things you say you're about, and especially when you use that as a marketing campaign for people to join your team, the truth comes out. Who you are is undeniable. People can see that. They are experiencing you day to day. And when you don't show up the way that you said and promised them you were going to show up, that trust in that relationship is broken. And it is very difficult for that trust to be restored once broken. And people leave. And this happens everywhere, right? Especially now in this climate, the number of individual leaders I speak to who are like, I no longer feel in alignment. Right? I am so disappointed. I am heartbroken to see how this company, this organization is responding to this climate, because it's showing me that they actually did not care about me. That who I am and what I stand for is not something that's of value to them. And people cannot stay in spaces where they're misaligned for a very long period of time, right? It creates a huge conflict of self. And so people end up leaving, right? So that's, I mean, on a small scale, that's what's happening. When we look and kind of blow that up of what's happening, the fractures that we're seeing in culture in terms of that level of cognitive dissonance, people being, how am I still living in a place that has shown me again and again that they do not care about me, right? It's extremely traumatic, and it creates this dissonance for individuals. And it's causing more and more people to look at, well, how can I now become more insular in my community and protect the spaces where I am seen and I am valued? And I am now going to actually disengage and unsubscribe from these larger systemics because I know that's not where I am seen and valued. Yeah.
So that leads me, I mean, of course, there's two questions. I could talk to you about this all day, Marie. But that leads me to like two other questions, which is, what do you say to the leader who is leading in a culture of like ego-driven performing, but doesn't necessarily know it, right? Like, you know, people are, you know, inherently, you always tell me this all the time, assume positive intent, right? So like, let's just say we are assuming positive intent here. And some leaders are leading in a culture and they're just, you know, just unaware, potentially. Because like, there's no way you can be, I want to say there's no way you can be unaware, but some might be unaware, right? What do you say to that person? Oh, but I was saying, you know, people may or may not know, right? Like, so like, what do you say to that person who's unintentionally causing harm? You know, and they believe that they're potentially empowering people. Like, what are the very first steps that you would tell them to actually take in terms of like, okay, this is like, how do you know this is happening? Hopefully my question makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the first thing I would say is there's always signs when there's dysfunction, right? And so oftentimes people will respond to symptoms, and when you're in a position of leadership, the root cause is usually you. so so if you're seeing symptoms of dysfunction, if people are unhappy, there are ways to immediately get curious about that. And I think robust feedback cultures, right, ones where people are actually empowered to honestly critique their experience in a way where there's safety to do that, meaning they're not going to be penalized for those opinions. That is, I think, the fastest and easiest way for leaders to start to bring an awareness. And of course, there is humility that needs to be present in receiving constructive critique, right? So I think, it's easy to, oh, well, the first step might be like, well, actually receive feedback. But before you receive feedback, you need to humble yourself and understand you are not perfect. None of us is perfect. There is room for growth. And once you can actually own there is room for growth, then hopefully when you receive the feedback, it should not be surprising to you that there is room for growth.
Yeah. I mean, I love that perspective, because I know, like, Marie, you met me very early on in my journey, where every time I would show up pounding my fist at the desk, like, how could they not know? How could she not understand? How could they not understand?
Mm-hmm.
And like, you really had to drive home that, like, this is an innate thing that people need to sit with within themselves. And I appreciate you just bringing that to light. But the second question that I had, which is, B of that first question, is, you said it, like, people are isolating, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
not, it can be a good thing, and it can also be not so great, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
for me, you are leaving this culture, entering into another culture, and you're carrying those things with you. So what would you say to those
Right.
people who are leaving that culture unknowingly, right? Thinking, oh my God, I'm leaving, and my leaving is my empowerment. This is my liberation. What would you say to those people who go into new cultures, take this with them, but then they're seeing ripples of what has happened from that
Mm-hmm.
other culture, and not realizing it's them? Like, what would you say to that particular leader?
Yeah. So I think there's quite a bit of, there are a number of like self-awareness practices you can do in that space, because one of the things that, and you said this earlier too, but when we leave cultural spaces and then go into new spaces, we take the culture with us. And so I think a good example of this, I mean, when I left corporate America and started my own practice, right, I was still working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Now, why am I doing that if I am the boss, right? And so there are ways to actually examine when we leave one culture because it didn't feel good, okay, how am I creating a different culture that is more aligned with who I am and how I need to show up? And a lot of what happens in that space, any self-awareness practice can do this for you, where you look at therapy as a self-reflective practice, right? Coaching is a self-reflective practice. Journaling is a self-reflective practice. Prayer and meditation are self-reflecting practices. People can take the assessment that you have on your website. I have an assessment on my website for people to identify what are my default behaviors that potentially are actually policing me or hurting me in the ways that I want to show up. And what can I do instead? How do I start shifting those behaviors? Because behavior change does not happen like that. Behavior change requires time. And if you have been acculturated in corporate American, white American culture, what you understand is time is not something that is an element of that culture. It is driven by urgency. It is driven by moving quickly, and change happens slowly.
I love that. I love that you brought this up. And, I got two more questions, and then we'll close things out, Marie. I love that you brought up your assessment. Now, guys, I took Marie's assessment, and I also then created an assessment. Marie's assessment really helped me disrupt a lot of things that was, bubbling up for me. And I was able to take it with me to our coaching conversations. And, the question I have here is, what do you hope people unlearn when engaging with the barriers to bridges assessment?
Yeah. I think so even before unlearning, I hope in taking the assessment, it brings forward an awareness for people. Because again, our defense mechanisms, the way that we protect our ego, they're designed to help us. And just like any other police force, there are ways that suddenly becomes abusive. So looking at how are you abusing yourself with your own defense mechanisms. And so the tool is designed to really give people that awareness of like, oh, I do that. And now I can see how that is maladaptive and how I want to be in relationship with other people at work, in my personal life, etc. But the key here is we have to start with awareness. And hopefully with awareness, that then allows you to get curious. But the reason I made the assessment is because I was noticing and working with clients, there was just such a lack of awareness. We would get people in a room together to do some workshop or some facilitated work, and people weren't even present to how even in those sessions, their barriers were up. They couldn't even be open to learning, which of course, we know that when people feel threatened, when people don't feel safe, literally the part of their brain that allows them to be in human relationships is turned off, right? We go into fight or flight. We go into our most primal part of our mind. And so curiosity cannot exist there. Learning cannot happen there if we already don't feel safe. So it's ways for people to start with that initial awareness of what am I doing, right? What are the behaviors I'm engaging in that are demonstrating that I actually don't feel safe? And if I choose to move towards behaviors that indicate that I feel safe, what does that get to look like? What can I start with? But it's that awareness that allows people to be open to, oh, I see that's something I do. That's not who I am. Let me get curious about that so that I can start the process of behavior change.
Yeah, I love that, Marie. And in Jeline putting together these slides for us, I really loved how she stacked this together, which is like, you are worthy even when unseen, right? Like, so it's really spending that time in the quiet moments and having those conversations with yourself of like, okay, something has to change, right? And like Marie mentioned before, it's like, oh, if this is happening pretty consistently, it's you. Like, you know what I mean? It ain't nobody else. Not that there's something wrong with you. It's just an opportunity for growth is what Marie is saying, which I absolutely love. And I have had the pleasure of being on the receiving end of High Tides. And, you know, High Tides has now, you know, made me into a bird, and I'm out here doing the work. Okay. Out here doing the work and really trying to educate people from being a performer to being a very present leader. And I can tell you, there's a, you know, people like to say, you know, I'm getting a lot of rest and I'm tired, and you know, I'm getting a lot of rest and I'm no longer tired. But then you turn around, you're sleeping all day, your back hurts, your neck hurts, and it's all of these things that I know for me, shifting my mindset from, oh, I no longer need to be in this headspace. I no longer have back pains. I no longer have, you know, the tightness in my right arm. Right? Like understanding like you are carrying these people's burdens. They are not yours. They don't belong to me.
Yeah.
You know, and like it's really a reinforcement, like a real reinforcement of like the learned behavior from childhood, as Marie said. And like they play on that. This is capitalism, people. It's the big C. Mm-hmm. It's the big C, folks. And then just to wrap things up in the last minute, Marie, if there's one thing you want people listening to remember about the performer pattern and leadership, you know, what is it?
So I think the one thing I'll say here is that change happens from the inside out, and change is most instructive when it comes from leadership. So leaders need to also do the work from the inside out.
Y'all heard it. Folks, y'all got to do the work. Marie Deveaux said it. The lady who been doing this for 25 years, she done seen you. She said you got to do it. You got to do the work. It's hard. It's messy. But she said you got to do
it. It requires time.
You heard it. She said you got to do it. You know, I mean, we are not nobody parents. We're not going to tell you what to do, but you know, it was a pleasure talking to you, Marie, today. And I'm just going to ask you to stay as I end the live. I want to check in
Yes,
with
of
you
course.
really quickly about what will happen next. But folks, thank you so much. I know I can't see you. Hopefully my tech is teching over there in the TikTok streets. And hopefully my tech is teching over there in the LinkedIn streets, and everybody enjoyed the conversation today. I know I most certainly did, and I'm hoping that we can have Marie back when we talk about more things, because this is not the end. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Marie. All right, let's end. Whew. I told y'all, Marie ain't come to play. My girl slays every single time. Okay, go ahead, get you some water. Get you some water, get you a journal, because I get it. You're going to want to write. It got you percolating. Marie didn't just walk us through our personal performance patterns, right? She walked us through the performance of power itself. And listen, if you've ever found yourself thinking, wait, is it me? Am I the problem? Or why do I feel like I have to smile while everything inside of me is on fire? This was the episode for you. This was supposed to be your mirror, but also your permission slip, your permission to pause, your permission to stop performing, your permission to stop shrink wrapping your truth in strategy decks and brand safe language just so people don't feel uncomfortable. Sis, let them sweat. Let them sweat. And while you're at it, here's your next move. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things on my YouTube channel, but also take the "what kind of leader are you really" assessment. Get your language, find your pattern, then grab the guide. It'll help you move things along. It'll help push you to who you are truly meant to be. Then I want you to share this episode with your coworker, your supervisor, that friend who has 5 planners, but still, you know, sis ain't got no peace. She don't got not a bit of peace. I want you to remember, this is your sign, right? This is the folks around you sign to stop performing, to start truly choosing and stop feeling. Okay? I'll see you in the next episode. And remember, just because we're quiet doesn't mean